Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome inside the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I am your host. Excited to talk about some of the combine takeaways from today, as well as jump into the 2023 running back class with my guy, Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How are you doing tonight?
Boy, I am tired. Just wrapped up the Ed TPA this week, or at least the filming part of it after the planning part of it, after the planning for the planning part of it. So now I have to do the whole writing and commentary part of it. But it's going very, very well, and my kids were fantastic. Speaking of which, today my kids on their own found out that Mr. Shun has a podcast that covers the Chargers. So if you go to Corona Del Mar High School, hello, how are you? Thanks for listening. I know even Telesco's kid has listened to us at one point. So, hey, hello, everyone at CDM. I don't even know if you knew there's a YouTube channel. I don't know why I just said that because now you're going to go look, but I hope you're doing well. Go study.
Yeah, there you go. It's it makes things working in education when you have good students. It makes things so much easier. My wife is a teacher, and she had a great class doing her ed TPA. My sister-in-law did not have a great class when she did her ed TPA, and it was kind of a nightmare. So definitely makes all the difference in the world. Definitely been a long week for me as well. All of the FAFSA and Cal Grant stuff for counselors is due this week. So it's been a long week, and then had to get home today and did some manual labor around the house, not around the house, outside of the house, I should say, for some yard work. So it's been a long day for me as well, but a fun day for sure.
What's the weather situation for you guys right now?
It's been dry. It's supposed to rain on Saturday, which is why we've been trying to do this project in our backyard. We're getting a fountain, so we're laying some decomposed
Nice.
granite in the backyard for the space to kind of be able to hold the fountain. So it's been a long couple days doing some outside projects. Beauty of home ownership.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That is the best physical performance of the day, it seems.
I wish. My back is so sore after doing this, man. I'm like, oh, like I don't use these muscles enough anymore. So it's been a long day, but here to talk about some great stuff, man. We got the combine is in full swing. Obviously, the edge rushers, defensive linemen, and linebackers are doing their thing today in Indianapolis, and we'll get some defensive backs tomorrow as well, and then we'll get the offensive performances and some special teams as well. So that is, of course, the physical testing. We'll talk about some of that. We do, of course, have to start about the media takeaways from Brandon Staley and Tom Telesco and their appearances across, the Pat McAfee show, PFF, and Good Morning Football as well. So not a ton of takeaways in terms of like concrete strategies or stuff like that. But, we started our offseason content talking about the biggest question mark of the offseason being Keenan Allen and Tom Telesco, and Brandon Staley, but mostly Tom Telesco, talked quite a bit about Keenan Allen's future with the Chargers. Tom Telesco, even comparing him to Charlie Joyner and Andre Reed, saying he's not going anywhere. Keenan Allen promptly responding by posting the video that the Chargers social media page, posting his own rendition with the "I'm not going fucking anywhere" with the Wolf on Wall Street rendition, which I thought was a nice touch. So, Tyler, seems like we're headed towards some resolution on the Keenan Allen front. What are your thoughts there after hearing Tom Telesco and what he had to say about Keenan Allen?
It's a mix of things because when we talked about this, the last time we talked about Keenan Allen and talked about the big question marks, you asked, what percent likelihood do you think it is that he stays? And I said 100%. And I was pretty, of course, as soon as the show ended, I went, maybe I shouldn't have said 100%. But hey, I guess it works out for one more year. What really surprised me was how committed it seemed they were to him. And almost like maybe you're sort of playing it in the media sort of way, like, hey, like, we're going to bat for you for sure. Like, we're going to keep you, but also like, we're going to let everybody know that we want you. But I mean, it was the Chargers social media team. It was the way Tom Telesco talked about him. It was what Keenan Allen posted. And even Justin Herbert, I think, like commented on it as well on Instagram or social media or whatever, made some little brief reference to Keenan Allen staying and what he posted. So even though I believe that he was 100% going to stay, I didn't expect that sentiment, which to me, considering the situation, really brings the idea of either an extension or maybe him being restructured or something into play, which I wasn't sure. You have two receivers that, their money ends when Herbert's money is going to really kick in and begin. So, not really sure how they're going to play that, but I mean, based on how important he is to Justin Herbert, how much we had heard throughout the season, how much happier Justin Herbert was because Keenan Allen was out there, because of the commitment from anyone from social media to Herbert to Telesco to Staley and Keenan himself. It really feels like we're not just headed for Keenan Allen staying, but maybe we're headed for some sort of extension here, which could help out the Chargers big time this year.
Yeah, we were messaging back and forth, and we both had the same thought there that like this didn't sound like. I mean, it was great that they were talking about Keenan Allen and sticking around, right? But it didn't sound like just like, hey, like we're not trading him. It did sound like, hey, some kind of contract resolution is coming here. Maybe that's a pay cut, maybe that's a restructure, maybe that's an extension, like you're talking about. And I agree with that. Like the two of us, messaged back and forth in our group chat with Arjun. We're like, hey, so what is it? What would an extension look like for Keenan Allen? And Arjun's busy doing his own thing. He didn't have like the time to sit down and do a mock up here. But the Chargers could effectively do the same kind of cap clearing by restructuring him that an extension would provide. So, doing an extension with Keenan Allen, I mean, depends exactly how you would work that. Is it a 2-year extension? Is it a 3-year extension? But very similar concept to what we talked about with Arjun with Austin Eckler, right? Like you are able to maybe give him a bigger signing bonus right now and push some of that money to 2024, 2025. Maybe one of the years is a void year. I mean, Tom Telesco hasn't really done the whole void year concept just yet. But that would be another good option for them to, be able to have some flexibility there. So, I think doing an extension for Keenan Allen makes sense. Like he showed down the stretch of last season that he still is able to play at a high level. And if you're confident that he's not going to have any injury concerns going down the road, that you think his game will age really well, then doing an extension would make sense, even if it's just a 1-year extension, right? Like they did with Denzel Perryman back in the day. So this is, I think, good news on the cap front because we were kind of doing the restructure numbers and it's like, oh my gosh, like these numbers get really high in 2024 for these, older players. But if you're able to tack on even just with that one more year for the Chargers, I think that really would give them a lot of flexibility for, the Justin Herbert extension era.
Yeah, I mean, is Keenan Allen going to be his peak? At some point, no. But at the same time, you almost feel like you're seeing this potential for an upswing here because, as long as he stays healthy, there's nothing about the numbers when he was on the field that suggest, oh, here's the cliff. Like, here we go.
Yeah.
No, this was a very, very good player who has insane chemistry with the quarterback. So them making this deal with the particular skill set that they have, can you have two guys making a ton of money through Herbert's entire contract? No, unlikely that's going to happen. But
Yeah.
I'm not saying these are the same players. The Chiefs got rid of Tyreek Hill, but they did have Travis Kelce. And even if they decide to get rid of, Mike Williams down the line next year, who knows? Maybe he's banged up again. They just have to move on because somebody has to go at some point. Keenan Allen or Justin Herbert still needs a guy. And in a class that's not so great, when you're cap strapped as is, there's no immediate play at wide receiver one where it's like, we're going to go get Herbert's new guy in round one. I don't really feel confident about that. There's nobody in free agency, especially with the money they have, where we can say, okay, they're going to go get Herbert's new guy. No, it's not going to happen. Right now they have a guy that he loves, and I'm happy with them committing to them, to him for at least another year or so. I don't want it just to be some long-term extension. I'm sure there's a very smart out in here, like you talked about with the Austin Eckler contract. We figured, maybe a 2-3 year extension, but it's really like a 1 more year extension. But it's still beneficial for both sides. So I'm all for it. I really am.
Yeah, I think this would make sense. And talking about the draft class and this being the combine and things like that, like I think if this wide receiver draft class were last year's class or the year before that class, I think you are having a different conversation about Keenan Allen and his future, or maybe you're having a different conversation about Mike Williams, right? But this receiver class is not the class to say, hey, let's go get our future wide receiver one here at 21, because I just don't think that is the case with this group. And that doesn't mean you're not going to improve the offense. That doesn't mean you're not going to improve the wide receiver room and the talent and the depth, because that's the thing that people keep saying is like, well, this isn't the group to take a wide receiver, but what about the depth? Well, you can take a Tyler Scott in round 2. You can take a Trey Palmer in round 3. You know, we haven't done a full wide receiver episode yet, but to me, the value of this receiver class is on day 2. And you're still able to go out and get a speed threat to really kind of open some things up and accomplish the same kind of thing that drafting in Jalen Hyatt would be in the first round. So I know there's a lot of people in our channel, you know, on Twitter, on Facebook, who will say you have to take a wide receiver in round 1 this year. And I would push back on that. I think this is not the class to do that kind of thing, and you don't need to. And, you know, a part of this is also Tom Telesco, including Josh Palmer. Like, this front office, this coaching staff loves Josh Palmer. And I think, you know, if you want to look at his 2022 season and say, you know, he didn't really rise to the occasion to become a wide receiver 1, I think that's fine. But he was drafted in the 3rd round. He wasn't drafted to be a wide receiver 1. He was drafted to be a really solid number 3, number 2 in a pinch. And I think he is that. And so, like, they can add to the room without drafting somebody in the 1st round because they really like Keenan Allen. He's going to be around, because they really like Mike Williams because he's going to be around. And same thing with Josh Palmer. So I just think drafting a wide receiver 4 in the 1st round is probably not smart roster building.
Yeah, I'll have to go through this wide receiver class. This is the one thing I can't say for sure yet, because I have not sat down and watched and graded, 12 guys. And I know who the random speed threat in the 6th round is going to be, which the Patriots will take in the 2nd round, I guess, this year. But yeah, I don't know. I understand the desperate need for a speedy receiver, but what I've heard from, one player in the building and what Eckler has said as well, of course you want just more than a track star out there, of course. But the sentiment was really just like, the offense could be so much better if we just had guys with speed.
Yeah.
Again, you want to look for more complete players. I believe Staley has talked about that as much. Like, we can't just have a speed guy. He's got to be able to run at least enough routes for us to feel comfortable. But, I would hate to reach on the 3rd wide receiver in a class that really isn't their best player available when one of these fantastic edge rushers that's blowing up the combine is sitting there.
Yeah.
Or, one of these tight ends that, I guess Kincaid's not going to blow up the combine, but if he does, do drills at his pro day or something, there's so many great players, it seems, that are going to be that are far and away maybe the best player available over a wide receiver. And if you could snatch one of those round 1 grade guys and then just find right on day 2, that sweet spot of receivers like you've been talking about, that's the way to go. Yes, of course. Like, I want speed. Everybody here wants speed on this team. We said as much last year. We took 1 guy, 2 guys, 3 guys, who knows, at different points. I just don't want them to force it in round 1 because the draft is longer than just the 1st round. Yes, the better players are probably in round 1 for receivers, but I could say that they're even better players at other positions. So, just hang in there and pray that Telesco, if they don't take a guy in round 1, that's cool. Just pray that, he doesn't forget the other 6 rounds again.
Yes, absolutely in favor of them drafting a receiver at some point in the first 3 rounds. Whether that's the 2nd round, the 3rd round is cool with me. And I think that's really where the value is. I think the depth of this receiver class is fantastic. There's a lot of great speed threats out there. I didn't even mention Jaden Reed, who I'm a big fan of. So I just don't really see the point in saying, this is a wide receiver in round 1 or we riot for the Chargers kind of draft. And that's just not what this draft class is. Like, if this were last year and there's a Chris Olave and a Garrett Wilson and a Drake London and all these guys, 100%, I would totally understand that with that class. But, this class is just not that. So, we'll see what happens there. From a Brandon Staley perspective, and we'll move on here and get to the running back class in a second. But from a Brandon Staley perspective, one thing that he has continued to talk about is the run game. And this is not something that he just talked about for the hiring of the offensive coordinator. Like, this is going to be a theme of the draft class. And listening to him talk about the run game this week at the combine made me think of 2 specific players, because I don't think it's necessarily like offensive line related, but it made me think of Darnell Washington and it made me think of Bijan Robinson, who are 2 athletic freaks who could really do a lot of damage for the Chargers run game. Darnell Washington basically is a 6th offensive lineman, far and away the best blocking tight end in this class. I think 21 would be a bit reach for me personally, because I just don't see that receiving upside.
Yeah.
But Bijan Robinson, like, we'll see what exactly happens there, because I wouldn't be surprised if he were a top 10 pick. I wouldn't be surprised if he fell past the Chargers just because he's a running back. But I am going to be so curious what this team does, because Tom Telesco has constantly said, like, hey, we're a best player available team. And listen, man, if Bijan Robinson is there at 21, he will be the best player available.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just going to be really interesting, because Brandon Staley, he seems so committed to solving the run game. But is Tom Telesco going to, have the balls essentially to say, hey, like, let's take a running back at 21 because he's the best player available?
So what was the specific quote or like kind of sentiment from Staley? What was he specifically talking about when those two players came to mind?
So he was asked several times by a bunch of different shows about, like, how do you make sure that next playoff push comes that you don't give up that kind of lead, that you're able to really get over the hump. And the two areas that he consistently talked about were the run game on offense, and then getting off the field on defense and being able to make stops on 3rd down specifically. So just the way like that he has talked about becoming like a more physical team, marrying the run and the pass. I think Bijan is a stronger possibility than a lot of people would think at this point. Unless your name is Bucky Brooks. Bucky Brooks has had them taking Bijan Robinson in both of his mock drafts for some reason.
I would just be curious. I mean, I guess it is the whole running back thing. To me, you look at the edge rushers, you can cluster some guys, even though maybe they're not even round 1 guys, but you can see like a tier where it would make sense. With this running back group, he just seems like the unicorn of the group. Is he a generational prospect? I don't think so, but like he's far and away, I guess, spoiler alert, Bijan Robinson's my running back 1. But yeah, that would be interesting if he were there at 21. If you're a best player available team, I really do think if it comes down to best player available, assuming someone like Nolan Smith is gone for the Chargers, because I assume after today for sure he's gone. It really just feels like Kincaid, Mayer, and Bijan, if he's there, that really does feel like their best player available. Like I don't see the Chargers having one of these receivers outside of maybe a slot guy, which I wouldn't get them taking because that just wouldn't happen. To me, it just seems like one of these tight ends or Bijan would be their best player available, not one of these wide receivers.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that, and I guess to a certain extent, like maybe Michael Mayer could be somebody that the Chargers would be really interested in. I mean, to me, he's like
I think they would be
the most well-rounded tight end. Apparently, he's been crushing the interview circuit at the combine. So I think that he's a really good prospect. I mean, just because I have obviously Dalton higher doesn't mean I don't like Michael Mayer. So Michael Mayer would be a fantastic pick for them too. I think that is somebody who also would really help the run game as well. So it's hard for me to look at this potential group that the Chargers could be picking from and feel bad about a pick. Like, I think even the receiver class, even though I'm not high on it, like even if you go get Jalen Hyatt or Zay Flowers, I would totally understand that, right? I think that would be a really good pick. I think just that I would prefer an edge rusher or a tight end personally. And then if Bijan is there, man, like I'd have a very hard time passing that up.
Is he your highest graded prospect so far?
He is, yes. Bijan Robinson right now has the highest grade in this class, and that's higher than Will Anderson. I haven't really decided what to do with Jalen Carter just yet because of that whole situation that happened at the combine yesterday.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens from a legality standpoint if I'm even going to bother putting a grade on him. But yeah, Bijan Robinson, I've said this a couple of times on Twitter, but Bijan has the highest grade I've given out of anybody over the last 4 years not named Penei Sewell. So like I do think that Bijan Robinson is a generational running back.
Wow. Okay. I mean, he's excellent. Don't get me wrong. I don't know what to label generational anymore. No,
somebody was like, "Oh, I think Dalton Kincaid's a generational tight end." I'm like, "I love Dalton. Let's calm down, though." We throw generational around way too often. Like, I think if you're a generational prospect, you've got to be like truly top notch, like best of the last 5 years minimum. And I think that is the case for Bijan Robinson. It's obviously not the case for Dalton because, I mean, Kyle Pitts exists.
Yes, he does.
All right, Tyler. Any other takeaways from the media tour? We'll dive into some player takeaways at a different time, I think. But any other takeaways from Tom Telesco and Brandon Staley's media tours?
Nope. That's most of it right there. I mean, once the Keenan Allen news, quote unquote, news broke, that was the big story. So, nope, covered it all.
All right. Sounds good. All right. So we're going to dive into this running back class here today. This is an exciting group, I think, at least from a top 5 perspective. I do think if the Chargers wanted to draft a running back, I do think you probably got to do it in the first 4 rounds with this group. So we'll start diving in here. Once Tyler is able to get the sheet up on the screen, we'll get to the rankings here. So Tyler, you did not have a just missed here, but I will put mine up here, and that is going to be, let me get to the sheet myself. That is going to be Mr. Kenny McIntosh from Georgia. Talk about all these Georgia players making these rankings. So, whoa. Oops. So Kenny McIntosh, I think he's very limited as a runner. I don't think he's necessarily somebody you draft as an RB1, but I think he's got such an elite third down stability or floor to him that I think if Kenny McIntosh were the running back who played the longest of this group, I would not be surprised. To me, he's kind of like a James White player who could really be a slot receiver if he really wanted to. His receiving upside is just so high. I mean, he can run all the choice routes. He can threaten you vertically from the backfield, from the slot. He's a fantastic ball tracker as well. And he's really good in pass protection. I think to me, he's probably the second best pass protector that I watched of this group behind somebody who is else on this list. But again, very limited as a runner. He's kind of a what I call a point and shoot running back, where it's like if the hole or the gap is not like very clearly defined, there's not a lot of like creativity behind the line of scrimmage. There's not a lot of like elusive play behind the line of scrimmage. Like he's not somebody that's gonna like create his way to some high end production. But what he's able to do as a receiver and a pass protector, I think, gives him a very high floor. So for that purpose, Kenny McIntosh is my just missed running back of this class.
No, that's a great one. He's a player with 500 receiving yards, which is so unlike most of the guys in this class, or at least on the list of the guys that I watched, because that's like 3 of these players, receiving contributions combined.
Yeah.
He's definitely going to get those James Cook comparisons because he came from Georgia and the receiving option. And I definitely do see, some similarities there. I think James Cook was maybe the better downfield receiving option, at least at Georgia. I felt like he was used a bit more vertically. But McIntosh, I was surprised because when I was doing the stats-based composite rankings before watching the film, the yards, with contact or after contact weren't so great. And I don't think like his film was great either, but I thought he was a bit more like underrated in that aspect than I would have expected. So the way that Georgia was able to use him and get him outside and do different things outside the tackles and whatnot, motion guy, a receiver, a screen, a wide receiver screen, you name it. You get him outside, and he's got this really great knack for making guys miss. So if the Chargers just wanted to go with a pure receiving option, which technically they don't really have, something, I mean, they do obviously with Austin Eckler, but in that rotation, I don't know if they feel like they trust, Isaiah Spiller with that yet. They should, but they clearly don't. Someone like McIntosh, especially if he can block, you say he's the second best pass protector. I don't have a hierarchy or tier ranking in my head, but I'm sure that goes a long way with someone like, Ryan Ficken and talking about special teams. So if that's kind of the name of his game and he's great at being a receiving option, if he can return kicks, all that, I love it.
Yeah, he definitely can return kicks. He's not the best kick returner of this running back group, but he's very good at it. And I agree for the Chargers. Like, I think if they do have some faith in Joshua Kelly and Isaiah Spiller, becoming those second and third like true runners, then somebody like Kenny McIntosh, I think, would be a good pick because of that special teams ability, because of his receiving ability. Just gives them some more speed as well, which I think is obviously desperately needed. So did he make your list?
Yes, he's actually number 8 for me.
Okay.
So
All
he
right.
made the list.
What
No, I just
about
talked about him, bullshitted the entire thing. Okay.
All right, who's 7 and 6 for you?
All right, number 7 is Zach Evans from screw it, Ole Miss.
There you go.
Easy to write the Mississippi.
Yep.
And the number 6, I have Roshan Johnson from Texas. Man, what are they doing at Texas with these running backs? They get these guys to just line up
Yeah.
and do whatever. I mean, you talk about two backs, as a fullback, as an outside perimeter receiver, as a running wildcat. I mean, this guy like faked the handoff and then hurdled a Baylor defender on the way to the end zone as as the quarterback in wildcat. So what an interesting, fascinating player. One of the big standout traits is his ability to work through contact, after contact. I was struggling to find guys that I felt really were able to be like that, the bigger back, and or at least act like that bigger back. And I thought Roshan Johnson did an excellent job with that. So obviously, with a lot of the guys on this list, kind of like McIntosh too, in a different way, you don't see a ton of snaps. Someone like the running back from UCLA, it's just like 2-3 years of just like 1,500 yards or whatever it is, and hundreds of carries. You don't have as much intel about someone like Johnson, but watching what he's able to do and what they asked him to do in the variety of roles, you really feel like, maybe you're not going to have him do all those things in the NFL, but with his ability to do so many things and with his ability to work through contact, which I believe in this class was third in yards after contact per attempt out of the 16 guys I have ranked, or 17 guys I have ranked. That's a really, really great balance there.
Yeah, and he doesn't have a ton of tread on his tires, right? Like he's coming into the league.
Yeah.
He's not got a ton of wear and tear on his body. So my favorite thing about Roshan Johnson is actually like his work with outside zone, I think is so good. Like I think he's billed as, because he's a bigger guy, he's billed as like this like ground and pound running back. I actually don't think that's what he's best at. Like I think you get Roshan into an outside zone scheme where he's able to work up to full speed. And then once he hits the line of scrimmage, man, he's so tough to tackle because he's so big and also because he's so fast. I'm very curious to see what he runs this week, if he is able to run. But, I think he's more than just like a big bruising back. I think he has actually some really great speed to him. Thomas Martinez is actually pointing out, he had 500 plus special team snaps in his career at Texas. To me, he is the best pass blocking running back of this group. So Roshan Johnson, is somebody I think would be a fantastic pick for the Chargers. I don't think he's really in the draft range, because I think to me you probably got to take him in the third round, and I just don't know if that's like where they probably want to. But Roshan Johnson, I'm a big fan of. So I watched a little bit of Zach Evans. What kind of made him stand out to you?
It was the combination of, well, really the two stats. So from Arjun, it was, let me see if I could find it. Well, not that the stats made the grade, but fourth in explosive run rate and sixth in breakaway run rate. It's more of just like a slightly more solid build than someone like a McIntosh as a runner at he's like 215 or something. The McIntosh is pretty tall. Like he's or not tall, but he's taller than some of these guys. He's not exactly a small scat back. But Evans, just the breakaway rate, the ability to get and score like massive big runs. I thought that was just slightly more impressive. He's not my favorite down to down back.
Sure.
Is he like Zamir White? I don't know. I just thought of Zamir White all of a sudden. Kind of like in the sense that he's a bit more of a difficult tackle, can hit, and like the lane is more clear. I guess it works. If he's able to make that jump cut in the backfield and get outside, it's fantastic. So if you got more of a home run hitter, but not like a Pierre Strong Jr., where it's like, oh, we're playing, East Dakota State and the lane's wide open and I run for 70 yards. Like, no, this guy played through some really tough teams. And I think him able to hit that, that breakaway rate is pretty impressive.
Yeah. The speed there is definitely impressive. I was concerned with him about the fumbling issue. Him and Dwayne McBride, were two guys where I like started to watch them, and then I saw how many fumbles that they had in their careers. I was like, I don't really love that. Dwayne McBride in particular had 9 fumbles in his college career, which is just not great for somebody who I think he only had like 400 total carries. So Zach Evans is something that I'll have to visit later on, I guess. So for me, I have at number 8 Mr. Kendre Miller from TCU.
Hmm.
And then at number 7, I have Tank Bigsby from Auburn. And then at number 6, let me make sure I have my list right. At number 6, I have Devon or Devin A Chain.
So yeah, I haven't watched your number 8 or number 7. So tell me about him.
Yeah, so Tank Bigsby for me, I think he's a little limited as an athlete. I don't think he's got like that true breakaway speed. But one of the things that I've really come to value from running backs is the ability to create positive plays from negative plays. And that is something that really stands out to me about Tank Bigsby. His offensive line at Auburn this past year was atrocious. And this man was getting defensive tackles in his face on every single rushing attempt, I felt like. And, I don't think he's an elite positive play creator, but it is something that really stands out and pops from time to time. And I think with a better offensive line, better system, that is something that would continue to stand out for him. And his yards after contact per attempt, I think, was 6th in the class. So he's good in that regard. Not much of a receiving threat, in my opinion. So he is more of like a traditional runner. But yeah, for me, it was just like how often he was given just the shittiest hand possible and how often he was able to create positive plays out of that. So if he tests well this week, I think that could certainly move him up on the list, but I do think there is some limitations there. Not to say he's like slow by any means, but I don't think he's necessarily super fast either. Kendre Miller, same kind of thing as Roschon Johnson, where I think he's kind of classified as a bigger back, but I think his best attribute is attacking outside zone. He's also kind of a point and shoot running back. I don't think there's a ton of creativity there. But he is somebody that I do think could be an explosive second level runner. We talk all the time about like discount versions, right? Like I'm a big fan of Zach Charbonnet, spoiler alert. To me, Kendre Miller is like the discount version of Zach Charbonnet. So not somebody that's going to light up the world from a testing perspective, but somebody that I think could be a pretty explosive second level runner in an outside zone scheme. I don't think you want to get him into a gap scheme, even though he's kind of bigger. So I think he is somebody you want to get in a system where you can have very clearly defined gaps and say, hey, like go, this is where you're going to go. This is how you're going to ride the wave. And then you're just going to go attack. And I think that would suit him very well.
Okay. I'll have to look into these guys. Achane's the only guy I've watched of those 3.
Yeah. So go ahead.
For it. Or okay, I'll go. So I'll just start with him at 5 at least to be able to start talking about him. So I didn't love him. He's the most.
He's so fast.
Yes. No, definitely for sure. I just didn't fall in love with him. It's just tough to say when I have a player at 5. But I'm going to have to look through. Ooh, is this kind of messed up because I moved it over on the share screen? Or are we good?
You're good. I think you can't see the left numbers, but can you scroll left now a little bit?
Yes.
There we go.
Is that better?
Yep. That looks
okay,
great.
Cool. Yeah. So I don't love him, but there's a lot to like about him. And I think if he's able to, if you watch him against like LSU and BJ Ojolari has this great, penetration into the backfield, he's able to, if he can keep his vision, like make that one cut and bounce outside. And he's excellent. And all of his work outside so far that I've watched is excellent. And you talk about his speed and what he can do and how he can break away. That's all really, really great. I'm not saying it's like Kenneth Walker, but I felt like Kenneth Walker was never my like RB1 or RB2 because I just felt like maybe not as great with the down to down to down stuff, but you get him that open space, you get him, his vision nice and clean. Definitely a home run threat. I don't know if he's officially one of the fastest or if he's officially the fastest guy at this group, but it would make sense. So I'm really curious how he tests, but he just doesn't do a ton for me in between the tackles. And I felt like for most of this class, I wasn't in love with a lot of these guys' work between the tackles. Now that's a really boring, like you don't want to run your offense just like, oh, we're going to pound a block between the tackles and halfback dive. Like you don't want to see that, but there are some guys that you do want to be able to see do something like that. So in my opinion, to be completely honest, I think Isaiah Spiller's tape in 2020 was better. 2021, maybe it's a mix. I don't know. Maybe he's a better overall all around threat. But I just got some watching him sometimes. Again, a lot of things he does well, but one of the things I don't like about running backs, or this quality that I don't like about some running backs, is contact balance. Not just like powering through contact, but when you're hit and how you're hit and who hits you really matters to me. And what do you do in those moments? And watching, some DB, granted, these are great, SEC DBs and all that, and linebackers, but like, if you're supposed to be this running back and I really want you to lead my offense, I don't want to see guys that are significantly smaller than you and lighter. Granted, again, great athletes, but it's like the way you get hit and the way you get knocked down that sometimes it makes me question just a little bit. It's kind of the same issue I might have had like Jerome Ford last year, where I felt like when it came to contact, I just didn't see the play through that I was hoping for. Not that every guy has to be, Brandon Jacobs or something, or the bust or whatever. Like, I don't need that, but I just need to see some, balance there, or at least show me that the numbers back that up. And I think in terms of contact, it's just kind of average. Like, all the numbers are average. The tape is fine, but it's kind of average. So to me, it's where he comes in at number 5.
Yeah, I think he's a scat back. I think he's a change of pace guy in the NFL. I think he could be a high end change of pace back, but he's so fast, and he is incredibly well balanced when he's able to have space, right? Like, if he's able to say, like, hey, you're just going to go make this person in the hole miss, then you can do that. And then, if you're not asking him to like break tackles or be physical at the point of attack, like I think he can be a good back. So I think it is important to figure out what kind of role you're asking these players to be. And A-Chain's a smaller guy too, so it's not like you're going to be, asking him to hand the ball off to him, 20 times a game like maybe some of these other backs. So he is an elite kickoff returner. I will say that he's got tons and tons of production as a kickoff returner. I think he might be the fastest player at the combine, period. He's got legit like 100-meter track speed. I think his best high school time, like wind aided, apparently, I don't know what that means, but his best track time was like 10.02 in high school, which is an insane time for any high school athlete, even if it is wind aided. So he might be, I think he's the favorite to potentially break John Ross's 40 time record, if I'm not mistaken. So he's legitimately fast. And I think you get him into a creative scheme that can, he didn't really do a ton of like jet sweep action at Texas A&M. That would be something I'd be interested in getting him into. And then kickoff returns, tosses, get him in as a pass catcher. So I think there's a very effective role out there for him. It's just not going to be somebody who's, carrying the ball 15, 18 times a game.
Yeah, 100%. Let me just fill out the rest of the 4 and 3. So at 4, I have Zach Charbonnet from UCLA. And at number 3, which means who number 2 is, I have Jahmyr Gibbs.
Nice.
Because whatever. There's always some running back end up liking everybody else.
I can't wait to talk about who you have at number 2. So he's going to be at number 3 for me. Unfortunately, I did not have the balls to really go there, but it is what it is. So number 5 for me, I have Roschon Johnson. We kind of already talked about him. Number 4, I have Zach Charbonnet from UCLA.
Nice.
And then number 3 is who I have, where I have Tyjae Spears from Tulane. So we'll talk about Tyjae in a second here. Oops, forgot the S on his name. We both have Zach Charbonnet at number 4. So what do you like about Zach Charbonnet?
It's plenty of things to like, and I think this is a really solid all-around player. But what really stood out to me is the receiving ability, and I don't think he's like the route runner of some of these guys. Like, I don't think he's like that. Sure. But there's something to be said about a guy who's just a legit safety blanket for a quarterback, and you could sell several times with some very poor high throw, outside throws, very difficult catches. Like, he had to make some legitimate. No, his quarterback's one heck of a blocker, though, man. Sometimes he would hand the ball off and then go run out and block for him.
He's super fast too. Yeah.
God bless the quarterback for trying to help out with that, at least. But no, I just found and was enamored with his ability to work as an outlet and as a receiving option. Again, not as like a vertical, he's not running a post route there that I saw. He's not doing a whole lot of screen stuff, but just as a safety outlet, be able to catch balls at any particular point, adjust from there, make a guy miss, and continue from there. That survivability is huge for me, and just being able to do something like that, I thought really stood out.
Yeah, I think that's a very underrated aspect of his game. I think he's an underrated back in this class in general. Um, obviously watching him go up against Utah over the past couple of years,
Mm,
he's such a tough back to defend because you want to talk about contact balance, you want to talk about yards after contact.
hmm
That's what Zach Charbonnet can do, and I think he is one of the few backs in this class that could really thrive in any kind of system. I think his best system would be an outside zone heavy scheme.
Yes.
He very clearly models his game after Nick Chubb.
Mm,
Even like with the way that he like stands in the backfield, it's like, okay, dude, like you could just like not make it any more
okay.
obvious who you watch.
Yeah.
But he's somebody that when he gets rolling, man, he's so tough to tackle. And he's really good in between the tackles. He's good in outside zone. I think he's very versatile. He's got great vision, great patience. Um, as little concerned about his speed. I don't think he has the same kind of speed as some of these other guys in terms
hmm
of like truly being a home run threat. But in terms of somebody that can give you be a constant like double threat, I think that's Zach Charbonnet, man. I think he could, take any carry for 15 yards, 20 yards, and you wouldn't be surprised. So I'm a big fan of his. I hated watching Utah go up against him every single time because they always struggled.
Yeah.
He was the one running back they could never really corral in the Pac-12. So
Mm.
I'm a big fan of his. I think he's very underrated in this class for sure.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know. And again, he's 4 for both of us. I hope there's like one more thing we can find to just kind of like maybe push him a bit higher, because I want to find like that one elite thing. But overall, just like a really solid dude in this class. I think he's a really, really solid back.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll pencil in my number 2 and number 1 here. Obviously, not very much of a surprise here. Did I spell that right? Jahmyr. Is that how you spell it? I forget.
I spelled it on mine. So sure.
Okay, and then obviously Bijan Robinson, like we talked about, number 1.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I'll let you talk about Bijan, or if I want to talk about Spears, whichever one.
So let's talk about Spears here for a second.
Thank God. Okay.
Man, dude, this is one of the most fun players I can ever remember studying because he's a jitterbug. Like he has a lot of the same kind of traits as Devon Achane. But then you watch his contact balance, man, and you watch his ability to run downhill in gap schemes. Like Tyjae Spears is one heck of a runner, man. Like
hmm
I think in a lot of other years, like he probably would challenge for the best running back in the class, man. Like he is an elite talent at running back for me. He's got a high end second round grade. So does Jahmyr Gibbs. I like Jahmyr Gibbs a lot as well, but Tyjae Spears, man, he can do it all, and he's electric. Like you want to talk about somebody who can truly create positive
Yes.
plays out of anything.
hmm
Like I know it's USC's defense, and I know it's like SMU's defense, right? Like he didn't play against the SEC, but
Sure.
there was literally like 2 plays against USC where like Marlon Tuipulotu, who is a fine draft prospect, and whoever they're like, he's like a 6'8" lanky linebacker. It's super weird to me. But like the 2 of them would have him cornered in the middle of like the
hmm
B gap. And Tyjae Spears would just like do some insane move or run somebody over, and then he's gone for 35 yards. Like watching
Yeah.
him create positive plays out of plays that should have been negative plays was just so outstanding. I loved watching Tyjae Spears.
Yeah, and that's really what pushed him ahead of Gibbs for me. And Gibbs, maybe you can talk about him as well.
Sure.
Gibbs was an awesome watch too, but watching Spears, it just like you just get a guy who just like the hair on your arms kind of stands up, and you're just like, damn, that was awesome. And again, like I seem to be falling in love with players who beat up on USC, whether it's Kincaid or now Spears. And yes, like did Spears play like the greatest defenses out there? No. Counterpoint, his offensive line is from Tulane, and his quarterback,
Right.
like this, it's not like he's playing on Georgia's offensive line and they're playing, USC or something. No, like this wasn't like the greatest team. No offense to them, but there's a talent difference there, and
Sure.
just sure, you can worry about him not being and playing the greatest teams, but all you can do is play the guys in front of you. And
Yeah.
man, watching him play, Tyjae Spears this past season had almost 1,400 yards either after contact or after the catch combined. 1,400 yards.
That's
That is
crazy.
insane. And I feel like, 1,200 were against USC. That poor defense couldn't do anything. And what was so cool about the way he runs it, and something I love that you kind of will notice about like a Zay Flowers as well, these guys, like some players just look like they were born with a football in their hands and it was glued to them their entire life. Some guys just like, that they had tile in their house and they were cutting and jumping over tiles and, doing that sort of thing. Like,
Yeah.
you can just tell with he'll knock guys over and then head into the open field and then just dead leg and make some guy miss and then spin move, make this guy miss. It's like, this guy he just looks and acts and plays like a running back. The numbers are fantastic. I mean, he's first in yards after the catch per reception of the 16 that I have, second in yards after contact per attempt, and second in explosive run rate. So you want something after the catch, he's got it. You want something, after contact, he's got it. You want something in terms of, big explosive runs in the open field, he's got it. I mean, again, like it almost sounds like this guy's my RB1. That's how good Bijan Robinson is.
Yeah.
But I mean, Spears, like what I found was, Rachaad White was my running back 1, but Breece Hall had the same grade as him. What Breece Hall was good at, which I really find is maybe going to be like a key translatable thing to the NFL, is, can you work through the BS? Can you sort and get more yards than expected when everything's not working? And some of these guys on this list, like they do require, an open field, getting outside, clear lanes, that sort of thing. And Breece Hall was so good. And it seems like it's translated well to the NFL. It's a shame he got hurt. Yeah. But he was so good at sorting through the crap because that offensive line was not good. But he was able to take a -4 play and then ended up at -1, which sounded so weird, but I admired that so much about him. And Spears is like that. He can just take something negative and not just get a little bit more, but get a whole heck of a lot more. Gibbs is another very explosive guy as well. But I just think, when they're very even to me, Spears just has a significant edge in terms of contact, or after contact, I should say. Gibbs being, I think, 13 out of 16 on this list. Spears just, I'm not saying he has it all. He has a high, I love him, still a high second round grade. There's maybe a couple things missing here and there. Like, I'm really, really curious to see how he tests, because if for some reason, he's able to just test through the roof too, I don't know, man. I'm not saying he's going in round 1, but wherever he's currently at, like round 3 to 4, it ain't happening. Like this player, you can only play who you've got in front of you. He's great against those players. The numbers are fantastic. He's number 1 in our composite rankings, second in explosive run rate, which Arjun said is like one of the most translatable, important things for running back success from college to the NFL. He was great at the Senior Bowl, apparently. If he goes out and kills the interviews, kills the combine, like this is a player on the rise. I started watching him and I loved him. It no longer feels like it's a, it's a great secret. Look at this running back. No, like this player, he's really, really good. And people are all noticing.
Yeah, man. He went down to the Senior Bowl and I think was probably the best running back there. So there was the first thing that I really got me tuning into Tyjae Spears was there was that one rep that he had at the Senior Bowl where he was doing a choice route, right? And the linebacker covered it initially very, very well. And then Tyjae Spears, like you said, he just dead-legged and he ducked right under that thing, created some elite separation. Like the linebacker was like, holy shit, what do I do here? And that's all over tape, man. Just the way that he can change directions so quickly, stay on balance, and then just hit it. There's that one play that everybody has seen, like the famous one I want to say was against, maybe it was SMU. I can't remember where, like he initially breaks some tackles, like he sifts through the traffic, like you said, then he gets to the second level, and then he mini hurdles somebody, and then instantly cuts back and goes for a touchdown. Like that change of direction, that balance is so crazy to me to look at somebody, and he's not the biggest guy, right? But he's to me, he's almost like a jitterbuggy version of Javonte Williams. And I love Javonte Williams because of his balance, because of his ability after contact. And I think Tyjae Spears is like a smaller, faster version of that. And so he's somebody that I think is gonna really outperform his draft stock. And
Yeah.
there's some talk of I think he like tore his ACL or something like in 2020,
Hmm.
which is maybe why people are a little bit concerned about him. Maybe having some poor medical history. I guess we'll find out this week really where that stands. But man, he was a fun watch.
Yeah. A lot of fun.
So we did talk about Bijan Robinson a little bit. I don't want to make it seem like neither of us really like Jahmyr Gibbs, because I think Jahmyr Gibbs is a really fun player.
He is.
I think to me he's like the perfect like 2023 RB1B. Like I don't think he's ever
Mm.
truly like going to be an RB1. Like I don't think he's somebody who, again, I don't think he's somebody you want to hand the ball off to 20 times. But they used him so frequently as a receiver, like on his own, like go split out into the slot, go out wide. We're going to use you in jet motion as well. So he's somebody I think is a very fun playmaker. Like you mentioned, the lack of ability after contact is a concern. I don't think you
Mhm.
really want him in an inside zone scheme, in a gap scheme. I think you probably you're looking at an outside zone dependent player. So maybe I have him graded a little too highly because of that. I don't think he's a scheme proof player, but
Mm.
man, his work as a pass catcher is incredible. And I think
Mhm.
that really gives him a very high floor, which to me is enough to have him over Charbonnet. It's enough to have him. I might change Tyjae Spears after talking about him for so long, but I think Gibbs has a very high floor because of his ability as a receiver.
Yeah, no, he really really does. There's a ton of balance when it comes to Gibbs, and you can feel better about where he played. And if you just if guys have two equal grades, you go for the one who had to play at Alabama, but a legit receiving option at different points. Great numbers overall, number 4 in our composite ranking. A really really solid player. I think even more than Spears. I think Spears, I do like I do. I ranked him higher. I do like him more. I think he's can be, as equally good a running back in the NFL. But Gibbs does have that ceiling potential to him. Just as I'm really curious how he tests as well, because he just seems like a more advanced, um, not prototype at the position, but a more advanced athlete. And just, I mean, again, these guys are Alabama. I'm sure he was some 5-star recruit from some state. Uh, really, really solid player. Again, it really just came down to the contact, and it came down to sort of that on film and the numbers. But Gibbs is awesome. Like I really think these first 4 guys, okay, well, Bijan's in his own tier, but I really feel like Spears, Gibbs, and Charbonnet are really like in a really, really solid tier of their own.
No, I would agree with that as well. If you're tiering these players, I think that you have a really nice second round group with Gibbs, Spears, and Charbonnet for sure. Roshan Johnson, Aching, and I don't know if I like Bigsby enough to put him in a third round tier. I would probably put him and Miller and McIntosh more day 3.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess this running back group overall doesn't have the depth that maybe last year's did, but
Mm-hmm.
I think the top of this running back class is significantly better than last year's, in my opinion.
Well, Bijan, yes.
I'm gonna go look
Yeah.
at last year's actually.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have a first round grade on anyone last year. I do with Bijan this year. Spears, I love. I would have Rashad White over him. I think I'd have Brees Hall. It's so hard to say because I just watched Spears and it's been a while since I watched Hall, but they're in pretty similar categories for me. I think I was looking at the 2022 composite rankings, and one that really stood out to me, which I remember is kind of funny because I had him over Jerome Ford, was Tyler Algier. And I think one thing that really stood out from his numbers and what Joshua Kelly has said on our show before as being like the number one thing they look at to evaluate running backs is that yards after contact average. So, looking at some of these guys, let's see, the number 1 guy in that department is Dwayne McBride, although he's at UAB. Then Spears, Roshan Johnson, Bijan Robinson, of course, Tank Bigsby, Zach Charbonnet, like all these guys that are, those are the guys I would really focus on in the draft if push came to shove.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a lot like yards per route run from a receiver's perspective. It's definitely
Yeah.
a key statistic. So Last year, obviously, Brees Hall, Kenneth Walker, and Damian Pierce, I felt like were all, very high second round grades. So
Yeah.
maybe that kind of rivals this year's class. But I mean, last year's class, you had James Cook, you had Rashad White. I really liked Keontae Ingram. You had Jerome Ford,
Mhm.
obviously Isaiah Spiller. You had Zamir White, Kyron Williams, Ty Chandler. So I feel like last year had more really solid, like end of day 2, early day 3 running backs.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't watch Tyler Algier like you did. But I think this year's top. I mean, with Bijan, it's hard to hard to go wrong.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so that's gonna do it for our running back rankings video there. So let us know what you guys think. Let us know. I know we have a lot of USC listeners. I apologize if this turned into some PTSD for you, but a lot of fun backs in this class. Tyler, any final thoughts before we head out?
No, I mean, I just I do like watching these running backs, and I can't wait to figure out which one runs a nice good old 4.740, so I can start mocking him to the Chargers.
Oh my gosh, if they draft another slow back, I'm gonna pound my head against the wall. But no, this is a really fun group for sure. Definitely some good talent to take advantage of. So we'll see what happens here. We might be crossing a milestone for this episode. We might hit 2 million views after this. So it's been a pretty crazy ride for the show. Obviously, we'll have
Mhm.
potentially some exciting news in the works as well. So thank you guys for tuning in. If this is the show that hits us across 2,000 or 2 million views, we'll let you know. But if not, we'll potentially be doing a Q&A episode this week to maybe push it over the edge. So appreciate all of the support here from all of you guys. It's been a great start to the off season, and excited to see where we go from here. Any other thoughts there, Tyler? Sorry, I know it was kind of
Oh,
weird because I was like wrapping it up or not, but I didn't know if you wanted to add anything.
before the show started, it was 1,999,818 views. So just hit like a couple times and refresh for a few hours, and suddenly we'll hit 2 million.
There we go. There we go. Appreciate all of that. So, all right, guys, that's gonna do it for us. We'll see you soon for our next show on Sunday evening.